Welcome back to the show. Jordanians have been protesting for the last week over price increases, taxes and government policy. We continue now with our panel discussion, and joining us now is Bessma Momani. She is a professor of political science at the University of Waterloo in Canada. Bessma, thanks for joining the panel. Thanks for being with us. And let me start with you. We see these demonstrations taking place in Jordan right now. They're very big, and in many instances they're very different. What is your view on what is taking place right now?
Well, I mean, I concur with some of your previous guests' assessment. Of course, this is very spontaneous, leaderless. We see that there aren't political parties attached to this protest. And of course, unions and professional associations are playing a very important role. But it really highlights just the reality that there's a great deal of inequality in the country, enormous cost of living that continue to rise, and a great sense of frustration that despite increased taxes throughout these years, the services are not commensurate with what is being paid out of the pockets of people. And that's the great frustration. Of course, overlay that all is, whether real or perceived, is the reality that many feel that there is a great deal of corruption, that there is a class of economic, political elite that are both infused with each other, that basically are gaining off of the system at the backs of many people. So there's an enormous frustration. I think anyone who has visited the country and understands the country knows very well that this has been bubbling to the surface for many years, and it is very much economic. I cannot stress that enough. But of course, the feeling that the political elite are indeed part of the economic problem should not be ignored, because I think that's an important element to this as well.
Right, Bessma, you mentioned a number of problems there: corruption, cost of living, lack of services, etc. I want to look at one particular issue, and that is the role that the IMF is playing in this. Jordan received more than $700 million from the IMF in 2016, and the IMF is backing this new tax bill. Jordan's national debt is $40 billion. Has the country been too reliant on foreign aid, and is it now paying for that?
It's absolutely been reliant on foreign aid, partly because the structure of the economy is frankly not productive. You know, there isn't a lot of enormous investment in the kinds of productive, inclusive growth that employs people. Instead, it is reliant on a service industry. It's reliant on speculation in real estate and land and property. It is, of course, very dependent on remittances from the Gulf countries that people send home. And all of that just distorts the entire economy, on top of which we have a very overvalued currency rate that makes Jordan very expensive for investors to want to come into. It's certainly expensive for tourists as well. And so the entire structure of the economy needs an entire rethink, frankly. And in many ways, you know, the IMF is sort of stuck with trying to deal with the parameters of the existing structure. And so what they want is to safeguard their resources, to get paid back quickly, and that includes obviously fiscal consolidation, increasing taxes and reducing expenses, which I think is frankly not the right approach, because what the country needs is an entire restructuring of the basis of the economy, not just tweaking in terms of its fiscal standing.
Rana Sweis, you recently wrote a piece for the New York Times in which you said, among other things, and I'm quoting here, "Recent signs of distance between King Abdullah and some important Persian Gulf rulers have raised questions." Explain that to us. What did you mean by that?
Basically, the Gulf are having their own problems. They have their own interests. So Jordan has taken a backseat. You know, if we're talking about Saudi Arabia, they have the war in Yemen. They have the prices of oil that has gone down. So the interests have shifted, and Jordan is paying the price for this. And we have, as the general mentioned as well, we know that you know, Saudi Arabia was also, let's say, unofficially supporting the peace process that Trump is going to present, or is said to be presenting. And Jordan made a very strong stance against the opening of the embassy in Jerusalem and recognizing Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, and it's paying the price for this as well.
Hassan, what about the changing regional environment? You wrote in the Jordan Times recently that Jordan now has fewer friends. Why is that, and why is it causing problems for the country?
Well, I think the point here, it all boils down to one point. Jordan is against the ultimate deal, or the century deal. This is going to be at the expense of the Palestinians as well as at the expense of the Jordanians. And there are some new leaders in the region, and here I'm talking about MBS, Mohammed bin Salman of Saudi Arabia, who wants to be the leader of the region, who wants to be the number one, the most important guy. He's driven by this objective, and he thinks that Iran is threatening his policies and his agendas. And he seeks Israel to be part of his alliances. And for this, he wants to scapegoat Jordan, scapegoat Palestine, or want to pressure Jordan in order to accept the deal. Because this is the price tag, let me say, if the Israelis want to join him in any joint, anything against Iran. This is the problem. I think also the whole strategic environment has changed. We are no longer in 2011 or 2010. The new rising non-state actors like ISIS, which was just defeated, Hezbollah, Hamas, as well as Iran, and well, Iran is not a non-state actor, but Iran, Turkey also, and Israel. Egypt is in a shambles. The Saudi Arabia is bogged down in a war in Yemen with all the crimes committed against Yemeni. So it's really a situation where Jordan finds itself isolated a little bit with no real friends. The Saudis have their own conditions. The Emiratis have their own conditions.
Right.
We have a problem with Qatar because of Saudi Arabia's pressure on Jordan. And the Israelis are actually not the one that we used to know. And then we have an American administration that want to impose the deal that would be detrimental to the interest of Jordan. Yeah. And that's why Jordan is actually as if the king is walking in a minefield. It's a very difficult situation for Jordan.
General Mamoun, how much jeopardy is King Abdullah himself under right now? I mean, he's been in office now for 19 years. Is his position in jeopardy in any way?
Not at all. We have what we call tyranny in Jordan. It's the government, the army, the people, and the king. And Jordan is very cohesive society and very immune from outside the player or internal player in actual fact. So I don't think anything will happen like this, but we need, as I said, to work very quickly or to act very quickly, revise our strategy. It's very important how we're gonna deal with these outside the player, because really they're really hurting Jordan. Jordan with Qatar stand also really did impact her in a way for cutting out the aid for her. So we need to open, as I said, the new alliance or switching alliance just to see what's happened, and we wait to see. And also, there is a classic thing what we do in Jordan, like anytime we had this public confidence in trouble, we change government, etc. And we need to do all these reforms to get back on track.
Bessma, another major issue for Jordan, and that is the unemployment rate, currently running at just over 18%, although some people believe that it's a lot more than that. How big a challenge is this for the new Prime Minister, and do you see a path forward on addressing this?
It's an enormous challenge. I mean, this is just untapped potential. Remember here, it's 18% officially. I would suggest it's probably much higher. And when we look at youth, it is double that, if not more. And that's really problematic because, this is a very young country. Like much of the region, much of the population is under the age of 30. They're highly educated. They're well connected. They're hyper connected in terms of their connectivity to the world online. And they know what they deserve and they want better. And frankly, this is an enormous challenge for any government to face. But indeed, I think what we're seeing here in terms of how many young people are out on the streets, being very pointed and frankly very articulate about their demands is a point to just reiterate how this society wants and really deserves better.
Okay, and that's where we're going to have to leave it. Thanks to all of you for being with us. That's it for this edition of The Heat. Thanks for being with us.